Cubone, a Pokemon species from the Kanto region in Generation 1 who is pretty underrated but also very popular. That is a very contradicting sentence. Regardless, Cubone has had pieces of merchandise before, a lot more than bonobos will ever get. Cubone has been on cards, has had a few figures, and even has a Funko Pop. But one piece of merchandise that I'm going to talk about in this video, and the one I like the most, are the plushies. Some good, some bad, some ugly. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favorite Cubone plushies. Before the list starts, I have a few rules. Firstly, these have to be official Pokemon plushies, no bootlegs, which also means that the shiny Cubone plushie will not be on this list. However, it will be mentioned in honorable mentions. Secondly, these have to be of Cubone, so no Marowak. Then again, Marowak has only had 3 plushies, one being the Sitting Cuties Cantonian Marowak, and the other 2 being of Alolan Marowak. And thirdly, these are my opinions only. If you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. If you have your own list, that's also perfectly fine. This is in no particular order, so let's just get this started. Starting at number 5 is the Pokemon Center Sleeping Cubone plushie. This plushie is absolutely adorable. I really like how this Cubone plushie in particular is curled up and clutching its bone club when it's asleep. Very adorable. It's a lot better than the previous Sleeping Cubone plushie, where it was simply just lying on its stomach while sleeping. It's still a nice Cubone plush, but this one blows it out of the water. I don't have this plushie at the moment, but it does seem like the skull is removable, which is a trend with more recent Cubone plushies. Regardless, if I ever do get this plushie, I'm not gonna cut the seams off so I can remove the skull, because I think it's pretty unnecessary for this one. One thing I have to mention before moving on to the next slot on this list is that this plush has been bootlegged. Bootleggers have taken the plushie, crappily modified it, and tried to sell it for a lot cheaper than the plush actually is worth. However, it's pretty easy to tell which is the bootleg and which is the official. The bootleg plushie has a shorter, rounder face and does not have the same snout shape as the official plush. The bone club appears to be more floppy and droopy, and the skull does not appear to be sewn on correctly, so watch out for bootlegs. Other than that, this is a really good and adorable Cubone plush. Next up is the most recent plushie on this list, the Cubone Build-A-Bear. I actually have this plushie in real life, so I'm going to cut to footage of me just showing off the plushie while I talk over it. This Cubone plushie is very well made and very adorable. It has some very nice embroidery for the eyes, the weird eyebrow things, the cracks on the skull, and the nostrils. The feet and hooves are nicely shaped and stuffed, and the Bab logo is on its left hoof. I also like the detail that the skull and the bone are fully attached to the plushie and are not removable. The skull is part of the plushie's head, and the bone is held in a strong grip, considering the fact that there are many Cubone plushies that don't have either the skull or the bone. It's also nicely sized for a Build-A-Bear plushie at around 12 to 16 inches tall, and it's decently sized compared to other Cubone plushies. Overall, this is a really nice Cubone plushie, and one that I've wanted for a while now. Next up is the Pokemon Sitting Cuties Cubone plush, known as Sitting Cuties in America, but known as Pokemon Fit in Japan. Now, there are 2 versions of this plush. The original release, which had orangish brown skin, and the re-release, which had significantly lighter skin. I might do a video sometime in the future explaining these weird recolored re-releases, but all you need to know for now is that Cubone is not the only one. Now back to the main point of this whole video. I have the original releases of Cubone and Marowak, but I do not have the recolored re-releases. So it's just footage of the original Cubone plush. Now, something weird about the Sitting Cuties Cubone plushie is that they're weirdly inconsistent with quality. The spikes in the fangs on some individual plushies are noticeable and well detailed, while others, such as mine's, do not have these details and are more rounded than anything. The faces on some of the Cubones can be kind of squished, as it's very notable on the skull, and some of the horns can either be sticking out correctly or just kind of squished a little bit. These are problems that are very notable on my plushie. Regardless of the inconsistent quality, I still like this plush. It is a really well-made plushie with nice details for the eyes, the nostrils, and the cracks on the skull. The bone is nicely sewed onto the hand so it doesn't fall. However, I would probably add more stitching onto it so it has a tighter grip on its bone. It lives up to its name, it sits pretty well, and it's pretty cute. It also fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. It compares well to other Cubone plushies. And overall, this is just a really good Cubone plush. Definitely in the top 3. The first 2 you'll see later on in this video. Next up is the Mystery Dungeon Cubone plush. This one is basically a cross between the Sene Cubone plushie and the Sitting Cuties Cubone plushie with the little yellow bandana. and it's bloody adorable. I love it. This one was made by the Pokemon Center, the same company who made the Sitting Cuties plushies, so of course it's going to look very similar to that plush. And just like the Sitting Cuties plushie, its arms are actually spread outwards instead of curled in. An interesting detail on this plushie is that it's the only Cubone plushie that I'm aware of whose bone is facing backwards. Usually in Cubone plushies, the two rounded endpoints of the bone is facing forwards, but in this particular one, the spiky endpoint is facing forward. Now, like with the Sleeping Cubone and the re-release Cubone plushie, I do not have this one in particular, considering the fact that I don't have the money to actually buy this plush. Nor can I even afford the Sleeping Cubone plushie for that matter. Regardless, this is a really, really cute plushie, and I would definitely want to buy this someday if I ever had the money. Same with the Sleeping Cubone plush. Before I head to the final plush on the slot, I'm going to give out some honorable mentions. First up is the Tomy Cubone plushie. I think this plushie is pretty cool and all, but there are a lot of other plushes on this list that blow this one out of the water. Next up is the Giant Cubone plushie. I think this one is pretty cool as well, and I really like the details they have on the Bone Club. But in my opinion, I do prefer the Build-A-Bear Cubone plushie over this one. I still think this one is really cool though. Next up is the Shiny Cubone plushie. I think this one is really, really cool as it's a plush version of the Shiny Cubone, but it's a bootleg so I didn't add it onto the list. Next up are the 2016 Katari Sleeping Cubone plushies, aka the original Sleeping Cubone plush. These two are the exact same plushie, except one of them has its eyes open and the other one has its eyes closed. Really, really cute plushies, but I think the newer Cubone plush is better. Last on the honorable mentions list is the Cubone Keychain plush. I have one for myself, it's pretty cute, but comparing the two small Cubone plushies I have here, I prefer the Sitting Cuties one. At the final spot is the Sene All-Stars Cubone plush. Personally, I think this is the best Cubone plushie of all time. No one can convince me otherwise. Along with the Mystery Dungeon Cubone plushie and the Sitting Cuties Cubone plush. Now there is a second version of this plush. The original has orangish-brown skin, the other one has more palish skin. Here are some better photos to actually tell the two apart. By far the best Cubone plushie of all time. It's both really cute, and it has some nice details which I really appreciate. The eyes, eyebrows, nostrils, and the cracks on the skull are nicely embroidered, which I appreciate, and the nice piece of detail is that the skull is removable. Sadly, it does not possess the tooth and spiky details the skull normally has, but it does have the horns and the weird cheekbones. The bone is the correct shape, and it is perfectly attached to Cubone's hand. The hooves aren't really as detailed as the Build-A-Bear plushie, but they're nice regardless. The plushie has beanbags in its lower bottom, so it allows it to stand up, similar to the Sitting Cuties plush. It's also at a nice size at around 6 inches tall, slightly taller than the Sitting Cuties plush. I do have some history with the Sene Cubone plushie, but in order to make this video not long enough, I'll make that into a separate video. For now, all you need to know is that this is my favorite Cubone plushie, and by far the best one. Well, that's all the time for this video. I might be able to get the rest of them sometime in the future. Maybe not the Mystery Dungeon or the Sleeping Cubone plushie because of how rare and expensive they are, but the other ones, it's a possibility I might be able to collect them. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out the channel. If you like it, subscribe. And until then, see you all in the next one.